Hey everybody, happy Earth Day. Gonna be starting up here in just a couple minutes. In about 3 or 4 minutes. Hope everyone's doing well and enjoying this day. While we're waiting here for a couple minutes to get started, anyone want to write in the comment section what they're planning on doing for Earth Day? I know it's we're a little limited with what we can do, but hope everyone's tuning in to our streamathon today and getting some ideas and getting inspired. And let me know what you're all doing today. Sun's finally coming out. It's a little chilly here, but turning into a beautiful day. Yeah. Got some mallards cruising down the creek. Not sure if you can see them there. There they go. All right, we'll get started in just 1 minute here. All right, it's 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock, so I'm going to pass my phone over to my trusty companion here. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Carroll. I'm a resource educator for Cornell Cooperative Extension, Dutchess County. Happy Earth Day to everybody. Hope you're enjoying the beautiful day. Getting outside a little bit. Of course, staying social distance here as we're trying to be responsible. Wanted to take you guys today on just a little stream walk. This is the Wappinger Creek in the town of LaGrange here in Dutchess County. A place near and dear to my heart. I grew up right on the stream here. Spent growing up fishing, canoeing, and I still come down here all the time when I need just to get a little peace of mind and to relax a little bit. So anyway, just wanted to take you guys along for the ride today, and please, I'll be checking the phone to see if you have comments. Please feel free to comment in if you have any questions as we go along. Other than that, just stick along for the ride and hope you get to enjoy it. So the trail that we're walking on today is the Wappinger Creek Greenway Trail. And again, as I mentioned, this is in the town of LaGrange. It's actually maintained by the LaGrange Conservation Advisory Committee. The trail was originally conceived of in the 1990s by the LaGrange CCEDC at that time, and it's still maintained to this day. It's again right along the Wappinger Creek, which is an important stream in Dutchess County that flows from the town of Pine Plains 42 miles southwest into the Hudson River, and it drains about 210 square miles. It's the size of the watershed. And this particular trail is notable because it is located within a floodplain forest, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But floodplain forests are an important habitat type that are increasingly diminishing. Well, I should say they had been historically diminishing. They're actually rebounding a little bit now as we're incorporating better conservation measures, but they're typically found along along riparian habitats, and they were oftentimes cleared for agriculture as the soil is rich and high in nutrients from flooded sediment. So this trail really kind of highlights a lot of amazing features of a floodplain forest. As you can see around me, we got some really nice tall tree species here. We got some really nice old sycamores. Over here is a big old red maple. And just wanted to show another cool feature over here is we have a lot of these kind of pools, these woodland pools here that oftentimes get flooded when the whole floodplain floods during a heavy storm event. And these are important not only for critters who use them for laying eggs for amphibians, but they're also important for flood storage. As we can see back here, we got another little woodland pool. And these are great to help slow down floodwaters and to slow down sediment as well as it's coming down the stream during a flood event. So another thing to consider when thinking about floodplain forest is everything that gets washed down with it. So here's an example of an invasive species. This is called lesser celandine. As we walk along, you're going to see these little yellow flowers. They're quite beautiful, actually, but not native. And this time of year, they're in bloom everywhere, and they're kind of carpeting the whole alongside the trail here. So, just wanted to point those out. It's got some other really nice sycamores here. So this trail has a lot of really nice native plants, but it also has a ton of invasives. So here we got a lot of multiflora rose. We got some garlic mustard mixed in there, and there's some pretty big patches of that as well. Over here we got some honeysuckle, another invasive that's pretty common around here. And oddly enough, there's, I believe this is some kind of Pachysandra. I believe it's Japanese Pachysandra. Probably at one point some garden escapee that has colonized and started doing well down here. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is. So a cool thing about this trail, again, I mentioned it, the town of LaGrange, CAC maintains it, and they've created a bunch of these signs for some of the kind of key species that are down here. And this is a catalpa, a tree that many might not know too well. Unfortunately, right now we can't see it because it's still too early, but when these leaf out, they have these huge, really big, they can almost get up to a foot in length, heart-shaped kind of leaves. So a really, really cool tree and pretty common around wet areas like here. So it's a little windy today, a little cold, but the sun's kind of coming in and out. So trying to stay warm here. Here's another one of those signs, another great tree here along the creek trail, a really common one. This is a nice example of the swamp white oak, another kind of wetland species that grows around the stream. Over here we can see some another kind of noxious and invasive plant. This is last year's Japanese knotweed. It's pretty difficult to eradicate completely. It's again pretty common here along the stream, but there's actually I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard that when the fresh shoots around this time of year are still green and small, that it's actually edible and somewhat like rhubarb. So I'm not recommending anyone try it, but I'm curious about that myself. So as we move along here, we're getting into kind of a sandy deposit here along the trail, which is interesting. And we also have a lot of these, I don't know, it might be tough to see in the camera here, but these kind of 6 to 8 foot tall shrubby trees with the yellow blossoms that are just starting. These are northern spicebush, an interesting plant that grows around riparian areas like this too. It gets its name because at least as far as I know, the leaves, they do have kind of a lemony spiciness to them, and I believe Native Americans actually used to use them for seasoning food. Got some robins calling. Wouldn't be spring out without some robins. There's a big patch of garlic mustard back there. Oh, here's one of those examples of the Japanese knotweed, kind of early on in its life cycle. At least this season, and the shoots are kind of interesting, and they almost look like asparagus, but they're kind of cool. Looks like we got a nesting pair of Canada geese across the creek here. They are common visitors of this area and do nest along here quite often. I'm not sure if anyone can see them. I'm sure you can hear them, but yeah, they're over there. But we'll leave them alone. Here's a lot more of that spice bush just starting to blossom. Those nice yellow blossoms, and if you pan around, I mean, it's pretty ubiquitous here in the understory. It's a great native shrubby plant here. These plants growing up here are called Indian poke or false hellebore. They're another non-native species and are actually pretty toxic, but they sometimes get confused with things like skunk cabbage, but they are a different plant. And just behind them there we can see some wild leeks or ramps, which are an edible species, and really do love kind of floodplain forests like this, well drained, rich soils. Let's see, what else do we have here? We got some spring beauties down here, these tiny little white flowers. It's still a little early in the day and they haven't all opened up a lot, but they probably will be once the sun gets out and they warm up a little bit. So here's another, I mentioned earlier, another kind of keystone species of a floodplain forest here. This is a really nice red oak. This is a tree that grows very commonly around here. That's a really nice old mature specimen. Another thing I love about this trail is there are relatively some pretty intact mature trees, which are really nice to look at. So as we're walking along, I had mentioned that celandine that kind of carpets all over the forest floor here, but we also have these kind of speckled leaves, which are the leaves of trout lilies. And if we look here, we have a couple that are starting to bloom. These nice little yellow flowers. There's a few more back there too. I'll see if I can find a nicer one as we go along. Here's one that looks like it did bloom a little bit. Might have gotten chewed on or something, but tough to say. I got a question. The plant that gets confused with skunk cabbage, it has a couple different names. False hellebore or Indian poke are two common names for it. Unfortunately, I don't remember the scientific name for it, but here's some nice trout lilies too. And they get that name because, at least as far as I know, I think because the leaves kind of look like the speckled spots of a trout. And they grow up kind of around the same time when trout are starting to feed. I don't know. So I wanted to highlight, and as we're walking through here, kind of as we're talking about the importance of floodplain forest and riparian habitat, I wanted to mention things you all can do. I wanted to highlight a program through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation called the Trees for Tribs program. Unfortunately, the grant cycle for this year just closed in February or March, but they do it almost every year, and it's a program for riparian landowners who wish to get riparian plants for their property or for properties that they manage. And they have both a competitive grant process for that, as well as a program called Buffer in a Bag. Buffer in a Bag is free pretty much to everyone who wants some plants. They give about, I think, 25 or so bare root plants. I think they got some willows, red maple, a couple other native, winterberry, I think, a couple other native plants for anyone who wants them to plant along their riparian buffer. And as I was talking about the importance of a floodplain, maintaining, an important, or a intact riparian buffer is important as well. Helps to prevent stream bank erosion, and it provides important habitat for birds and other wildlife. So I think these are some wild geraniums down here. I'm not positive, they're not in bloom yet, but the leaves look like them. Got a ruby crown kinglet singing in the back there. I'm not sure if anybody heard that. I was down here scouting out yesterday and had a couple mallards on the creek and some common mergansers flying by and a red-tailed hawk. This area is actually a really nice spot to bird watch as well. Lots of warblers come in the spring. Got some yellow-rumped warblers and palm warblers yesterday. Lots of woodpeckers. Really nice area. Yeah, and my coworker Carolyn just shared some information on the Trees for Tribs program. Thanks for that. So if anyone's interested and wants more information on that, check out that link in the comments. So this trail is it's a little over a mile. I think it's 1.25 miles each way. And you can access it from Slate Pass Road in the town of LaGrange. And I believe the town's CAC is looking to expand it further. I think the goal eventually is to create a kind of connection all the way to the town of Pleasant Valley, and have a really nice connected trail showcasing this beautiful floodplain forest habitat. Here we got a nice black cherry. Down here there's a cool area where the creek kind of splits in two. There's an island in between the two, and right on the tip, the downstream tip of this little island here, there's not seeing them this year, but there's been a pair of nesting Canada geese almost every year. It's a pretty cool little spot. They got a nice little isolated safe haven there. So getting a little further along here, we can start seeing, we got some willows. Oh, sure, Colin. Yeah, it's a great point. So some field marks as we're going along here. These are let's look at this red maple actually back here. This is a good one. So red maple is one of the kind of keystone species of floodplain forest, at least in this region. One of the kind of easy identifiable marks of this type of tree, especially when it gets mature like this, are these kind of deep furrows in the bark that kind of, from a distance, do appear a little bit of a rusty red. Obviously easier to identify when they're leafed out, but yeah, from the bark there, that's one of the kind of telling marks of that. Back here we got this big, but that kind of there's a nice big willow. Here's another invasive plant, burning bush. It has these kind of ends on the bark, and during the fall, the leaves on this tree, the foliage on this plant will get bright red. It's used as an ornament for people's homes and gardens, and it's a pretty invasive. Sure, everyone a rose. Here's the buds of the bush that I was